You're welcome to join us.
So Glenn, I have the mail and processing stages updated, and then there's one mail and processing stages. Do you want me to remove the one that does not say updated?
Correct.
Okay. Done.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Rajiv.
Hello.
Hi, Rajiv.
And
Yep.
in fact, it's 5 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody. And good evening. This is the CDNI session at IETF 124 in Montreal. And we kick it off. Let's share the slides. And I'm going to share the screen.
We see the slides.
Okay. We're just slow on my side.
They're shared.
There they are. Yep, perfect. All right, so let me kick off the session. So I have Chris Lemons here in the room and Kevin Ma remote. And so welcome everybody on for IETF 124. And let's go through the next slide here. Slide number 2. I'm going too fast. Okay, so this is the new NoteWell, and they've done a good job in making the language very concise and trying to fit that into one, and we don't have to do the note very well. But that said, please review what you see on the screen here. Important thing is that we need to be courteous and behave in a professional manner. And most of us are remote, so I think that still applies though. And other important thing is that if you are aware of any IETF contribution or that is covered by any patent that you are familiar with or you are aware, then please make sure that anything that you discuss that relates to patent, that you're not in that meeting, then excuse yourself.
Read the BCP and do what it says.
Yes, yes. And I think rest of the things it talks about for detailed process information, you can look at RFC 2026. And I think that's about it for the NoteWell. And moving on to the slides. This is the meeting tips. I'm going to move on from these slides. Likewise, resources. Good enough to share, but I don't know if there's anything new in here. And that brings us to the meat of the topics that we want to cover today. So as you see, we have allocated, there's 2 sets of things that we want to accomplish today. One is on the left-hand column, you see we're going to spend some time to go over the new charter. And then next topic is to discuss the current, look at the current milestone. We may need to adjust the dates there for some of the documents. Some may come sooner than the others. So we'll go through that. And then the newly adopted drafts. So there are 4 new drafts that we have adopted as working group. And these are listed below. So these would need to be added into the milestone as well. So we can talk through that when we go in the milestone section and see how we want to pace these drafts and see how we want to fit those in the milestones. And then there's one draft that is actually ready for Shepherd. That's the edge control metadata. We have gone through the working group last call, and this document is actually ready to move forward. And Guillaume Bichot has graciously accepted to be a shepherd there. So Guillaume would be writing the shepherd part on that, and then we'll move that along. The other document, cache control metadata -04, that actually is also nearly ready. However, it has a normative references to MEL. So we're going to have to wait until MEL is completed, and then we will move the document along. So that's the status there. And then the column that you see on the right side, we have reserved about 60 minutes to go through at least these 6 documents that are in progress. These are the working group drafts. So we'll go through that, and we're going to start off with Guillaume's document first, and then transition into named footprint and the control interface and triggers. Hopefully, Alan is here on the session, and then we'll pivot to the 2 documents that Ben has. One is the protected secrets and the logging extensions, and then we'll go through the details of the 4 documents that are listed on the left side that have recently become working group drafts, to have Glenn Goldstein cover those as to what those new drafts are. And then we want to talk about, see if we want to schedule some interims between now and the next IETF session. So we'll talk about that. And then if we have some time, we'll open up the floor for any other topics. So that's what we have on the agenda. Any agenda bashing?
I'll just add that, yeah, we have some overlap because what Guillaume is about to talk about now is one of those 4 documents, in fact. So there'll be a little bit of overlap, but I'll kind of pick up the pieces on whatever wasn't covered.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so that's on the chair slide. Let's see. We want to.
Do we have charter slides?
Yeah, we have. So just need to bring the charter slides.
Do you want me to press buttons?
Share slides.
You got them.
I got them. They're probably at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if this thing works. All right. It is not. Next slide.
Okay.
All right. So we have, I am standing on the correct thing. We have rechartered. Success. It's been 2 years. We've gone back and forth a whole bunch of times, and we can stop going back and forth now. The new charter is simpler. I do encourage you to go read it, but it now reflects accurately the work that the group is performing, the work that the group has set before it, and what the IESG would like us to be working on. So it's simplified. We've pulled out the references to work that has been completed. We've removed the definitions because the first time when we first chartered, we had to carefully scope the work and put the definitions into the charter. And since then, we've written very detailed, excellent RFCs that specify what all of that stuff is. And so rather than trying to restate and scope work that's already done, we just point at the existing work that lays out the framework and references it. And so we will be defining the CDNI metadata, key functions. So for example, request routing, footprint, MI, CI, logging, all of that jazz. And we've updated the language to be inclusive of the work that we're about to do. So it now puts MEL and processing stages clearly and unambiguously in scope. So we also don't have to continue the conversations about whether those are in the scope or out of scope of the charter. So final charter is done. We are no longer requesting comments. Go read it. And we have updated the milestones to reflect the document progression. You want me to talk to these?
Yes.
Or do you want to?
Go ahead.
Was that a me or you?
You.
Okay.
Are you good? Are you
I'm
good?
good.
With that? Okay.
It's a chart. I can talk about the chart. Yeah. So we have milestones associated with each of our documents, and one of the things that we need to do is we need to take a look at these milestones, make sure that they're realistic. Obviously, things happen, things slip. But ideally, we'd like to have a schedule that is not perpetually slipping. So if we can come up with some realistic dates, and so as I talk about these, think in your head, does that sound unreasonable? And if it does, then at the end, when I say, does anyone want to hack the milestones? Please come to the mic. So in December, we're looking at trying to get, and this is the first one. So this is a month and a half from now, with a lot of vacation and holidays in the middle. Submitting specifications for control triggers and edge control metadata. So the goal is to have those done this year. In March, we're looking at protected secrets and cache control metadata. In June, we want client access control. In August, we want logging. This time next year, we want to have named footprints done. And then we're probably going to try to adjust this last one based on the next slide, because we just adopted 4 new documents. And I'm suspecting that I'm about to hear people come to the mic line and tell me that we need to adjust some of these dates. So. Please make sure you put yourself in the queue.
And yeah, I just put myself in the queue here, and I'm just going to speak from just for the convenience, just from here. So I think the 2 December deliverables that we have, the control interface and triggers might be at a risk, but I'll let Alan speak to that because he submitted version 18 just this week, and I don't know how much time there is for review and all that. But what I wanted to call out is the second document, the edge control metadata. So that one is, we have gone through the working group last call. So that one seems like that can potentially be a candidate for December, as long as we can get the Shepherd document right up and push it out to the IESG. So I think that one has a realistic chance on going forward. The other comment is that, as I was speaking earlier, that the cache control metadata has a dependency on MEL. So I think the March 2026 date may be okay or may not be okay. I'm not quite sure yet. So that's what I want to just call out.
Alan.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, so on the timeline, right? So for triggers, I think it will depend on review. And we may have to do at least maybe minor version 19, because there are some little nits that kind of I allocated that need to be corrected. Like there's broken JSON in a couple of places, things of this nature. But this is minor, and I think we can turn it around quickly. But what I do need is to ideally have Kevin and maybe Nir Sofer kind of look at the triggers, and basically again Kevin did extensive review in the summer, is great. As a result, there's some new material, so there's really looking for feedback on those specific 2 new chapters from Kevin. Anybody else who's willing to give it a read, like I took a look at it, it's 117 pages right now. It's massive, right? So anybody who's willing to read through this and offer comments would be welcome. So we can turn it around quickly, like as long as this is minor. But if there's any major, so I think we can do version 18 and still meet the deadline, right? If review is minor or shows no issues. And most likely we'll have to do another draft just because for small corrections. If review turns to be more major, then December would be kind of in jeopardy. First. Yep.
Let me suggest then, based on the information that you just said, that December is unlikely. And I would ask, which sounds more realistic, February or March next year?
Shenzhen, like by Shenzhen, like what's the cutover for that?
So yeah, March is Shenzhen. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would imagine there is a cutover before that. Yeah, so we can say February. Yes.
Let's say February.
Yeah.
All right.
On named footprints, it's hard for me to tell because I think I'll talk about this later today. Kind of, it seems to me that this could be a longer journey because it seems that this kind of undertaking is more massive than I think we initially imagined. So it's not a minor. It's not sort of an extension to kind of. We need to kind of stand up potentially new base extension object for this. So I don't expect this to be really a year. It likely will take more.
Okay, so looking at that, June 2027 sound good to you?
That's fair, yeah.
Okay, that's named footprints.
Yeah,
And-
I would
and
add. I
I'll
would
take a
add.
moment to thank Kevin for taking notes here.
Thanks, Kevin.
And I would add that kind of it's not kind of we have a plan actually to submit a new draft. So it's not actually it's not not even an individual draft, but out of the base writing on the trigger interface, there is a set of trigger extensions we want to submit. So I think it will be 1 or 2 drafts that we'd want to do, and I don't know how that falls within the current order or not, but that just at least two drafts that we're looking to do.
Yes.
Kind of extending.
So if it splits, we will probably look at updating the milestones to account for that, so that possibly one can be done before the other.
How do you mean?
You were suggesting that named footprints may split. Is that correct?
No. I'm saying there's 2 net new drafts that kind of will plan on working probably next year, and they are writing on triggers. Basically, there's all the cache management interface work that was done at SVTA. So there's likely, for sure, 1, maybe 2 drafts that will want to submit.
Okay, well that's good. If you have work that you are going to be seeking for adoption for, as soon as there are initial drafts of that, certainly bring them to this group.
Yeah, certainly plan to do that.
All right, that was kind of Alan's. I see Glenn, you're in the queue.
Yes. So yeah, I was just going to add that 2 of the newly adopted ones, the processing stages and the metadata expression language, as we mentioned, they're foundational. Several of the others either build on them either normatively or informatively. It was the original intention that those 2 actually move first, and the only reason they got pushed so far back was they were waiting on the charter. So
Right.
normally I would have pushed those 2 first and everything else on top of them. So I think we want to, somehow accelerate getting those 2 through the pipeline.
So I'm thinking about the rate at which these things move. Does June 2026 sound believable for those 2 drafts?
Well, I guess
And
it would be. I
I'm
put it
cheating
before
asking
cache
the
control, since cache control depends on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I cannot imagine those being done before June. I know how big they are, and there's going to be a fair amount of back and forth. I'm expecting a few revisions.
Yeah. Sure, for June.
And that's, if you want to pop to the next slide, since we're talking about it.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that we'll come back to this slide again.
Yeah,
we
we're
didn't
gonna
talk
come
about
back.
the log. Yeah,
We're not done with this slide, but yeah, so everybody can see it. We just adopted, as of today, as of a few hours ago, the adoption call, the carefully timed adoption call was completed, and these 4 documents have been adopted. And so what I'm seeing is that metadata expression language in milestone in June, and processing stages milestone in June, and those sound believable. Did you have? Yeah. No, they're believable. We're telling the future, and telling the future is hard. We also have delivery metadata and source access control. Did you want to speak to those?
I would push source access control a little further back on the timeline. It's a monster as well. and not
Okay,
as
so
important.
look, August for source access control.
Yeah.
Okay. And then delivery metadata.
I'll defer to Guillaume since he's really actively working with that
Okay.
end.
Well, he's not in the queue, but he should be soon.
He's going to talk about that doc anyway.
Yeah.
And we
right.
covered all the other ones. Client access control, was that in the list there someplace? I guess it was. Yeah.
Yeah, so go back one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So client access control, did you want that one to also go to June next year? Not June.
Let's push that one back a little bit too, just till we get the core ones important. That's the one that has cat metadata in it, by the way.
Right. So August next year.
Yeah, I just think to get the order straight, this makes more sense. Get the foundational ones done first.
Okay. I see Kevin queued.
Yeah, I was just going to put in my 2 cents on the triggers. I think we should try and meet our December date. I think if we try hard, we can do it. I do plan to review it, the new draft, and put out comments. Hopefully there's not a lot there, but if we have to move it, that's fine too.
We can delay the moving of that one back to after, like, it. If we don't have to rev it, I think December's easy. If we have to rev triggers, I don't think December's possible.
Right. If it's just nits, then we should be able to do it, but yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then I don't know how feasible the MEL and PE are next June, but I think if that's what we're going for, the extra 2 months to just rev the other docs seems okay. Client access control is almost done, or cache control is almost done, right?
Yeah, edge control. Yeah,
Or sorry, edge.
the number 2 in the list there.
No, cache control is the one that is dependent on MEL, and we're going to push that to August because we want to get MEL first in June, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. All right, thanks.
Rajiv.
Yeah, I think Guillaume, Glenn already brought up my point, which I was going to make, which is I was concerned that there's a very short gap between protected secrets and client access control, because client access control does refer to a lot of stuff from protected secrets. But yeah, moving it out to August, I think gives us enough buffer.
All right. And now we're back to Guillaume.
Yeah, so is it October 20? That's what you mean?
So that was the adoption. That was when the adoption call began.
Okay, so there is no plan for okay. So yeah, I'm going to be I plan to be active on the CDNI delivery metadata. Yes. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can expect something in March. We will be nearly ready, hopefully. Even maybe December, but I don't know. I don't want to be too optimistic, but it's not a complex draft as soon as the overall subjects are agreed. And I think I'm going to the right direction. We are going to the right direction, so it should not be a big deal.
Do either of those have normative dependencies on processing stages or MEL?
No.
No? Okay. Then yeah, March could be reasonable.
Yeah, March is probably reasonable. It's not that difficult. Maybe some editorial type of changes, but I think the concept is pretty clear, so it shouldn't be too controversial.
Right.
All right. Well, I think that's all the documents. So we will. Oh, I see our glorious area director at the mic.
Hi, Gori at the mic. Yeah, that looks good. presumably you're going to do once through this and not deliver them all in March, or else they will sit in my queue for a long time. So I can probably do like one a month on average. I mean, it's okay in bursts, but so kind of regulate it a little bit. It'll be fine in reality.
Yeah. In reality, we'll moderate it as well. If we schedule everything in March, some subset of them will slip because our authors are also limited.
Yeah, and we want everyone to review them, or else they'll just not progress afterwards. So yep, that'll be good. Review them all, go for the milestones, and let's see how we work out.
Yeah,
most excellent.
Yeah, so I think action item is we'll update the dates on these, and then we'll just make sure that everybody has time to look through it again. And if there's any adjustments, then we'll make the adjustments.
You want me to, what do you want to?
I can do that.
Sanjay will speak.
So the next two slides, I just wanted to make sure that we walk through some input that we proactively received from IANA registry, and it's very helpful, and I'm so glad that they're actually doing it. So in this case, this slide is showing the early feedback that we got from the IANA folks, and this is on the RFC 8007 BIS. So as you can see, Alan, here, their comments are pretty clear. So what they're saying is that any new registry that will be maintained via the specification requirement policy, they're recommending to include advice to future experts. So you have done that in section 7.7, but just go ahead and make sure that you do the same thing in section 7.5 and 7.6. And that was one feedback. And the second feedback is that the new registry section in 7.8 needs a registration process procedure. So, and they outlined RFC 8126, and I also looked at that. Section 4 is very helpful, so you can take a look at that and then make sure that section 7.8 is corresponding to that. So I think that's already a change that you would need to make on the version 18.
Okay.
All right, and then there was also an early feedback from IANA on named footprint. And again, they've given some helpful hints as well as to where you can find it. So the first comment was to make sure that the description field is there. And there's an example that they have given of how to follow that. So that's one. And then they've also suggested some change in the terminology that you're using. So the old one it talks about sub-registry, and they are asking to use the word registry there. So they've already suggested the new text there. So that change would need to be made. Would need to happen. And then guidelines on changes, it's already listed in the number 3. That's helpful. So you can take a look at the guidelines.
Alan for Q.
Yeah, so it seems like at least footprints I'm less concerned about because we have time. I think it's early in the process too. But on the triggers, it looks like that kind of another reason to do the next draft. I think, and I agree with Kevin. Like we can make an effort to make it fast, kind of and turn around. But I think we'll need version 19, and then there's this change from the previous slide. A couple of things we identified in your review, and I think we should shoot for 19 and then finish it in December. Yeah.
Yeah, but just wait for the 19 until you get some feedback, so that you just are doing one update, all updates at one time, and hopefully that would be it for 19 version 19.
Yeah, I'll wait certainly for Kevin's feedback, and hopefully Nir will provide some as well. That's as a minimum. So anybody else is willing to kind of jump into the fray, welcome. Wait for that, and then I think we'll shoot for 19, and then hopefully that will be the end of it.
Yep, sounds like a plan. Let's go to the next slide. And I think this one, you're early in your document life cycle here, so you can pick up the change when you make the next revision of this. Yeah. Next slide. I think that
You're
might,
done.
yeah. All right, so I think this is all the discussions we had for milestones and charter. So let's move on to the next slide. Thank you.
I think I figured out how to make the clicker work.
So I think we have Guillaume would be going first here. Yep.
I can share the deck
Yeah.
directly.
It's being shared. It's just being slow.
Okay.
That
What are we?
okay.
Which one are we doing on Guillaume?
Guillaume is the
TV2. CI.
no. The Guillaume's is the
Logging extensions?
no.
Which one are you doing, Guillaume?
No, delivery metadata.
Gotcha. Then press the button. This should have given you slide control.
Right. Looks it. Yeah, got the slide control. Very good. So yeah. So this you remember during the last meeting I presented the previous version, version 04 of the draft that was named BShow, draft BShow delivery metadata. It was the fourth version, and it was there was some kind of controversy. It was a bit complex, and the message was a bit blurry. So Alan had a lot of comment at that period, and the comments were well received, and we went to the next version, to the Nova version, which is this version that has been renamed in metadata 00, IETF delivery metadata 00 now, and yeah, the new version is a lot more simplified regarding the previous one, and I'm going to show you basically what this draft talks about. So, whoops. Okay. Yeah. So the motivation is almost the same. Well, roughly modified regarding the previous motivation. So we want to present with this draft several options exposed by the downstream CDN related to content delivery. And it means it gathers basically three families or three kinds and source of options that the upstream CDN would have the possibility to operate. The first one is CDN selection, and I'm going to depict each of these, let's say, feature. So basically, the CDN selection is the idea of having for downstream CDN, the idea of exposing multiple transport arrangements. So in other words, to simplify it, you don't have only a CDN infrastructure, you may own several CDN infrastructure, right? Whether it's virtual or physical, doesn't change. Right? So you need to expose this, and the upstream CDN can select some of these transport arrangements depending on some criteria that we're going to quickly browse. Or the second line tells you about that. So the selections can be done on traffic type, capacity, and transport type. And by transport type, I mean unicast versus multicast. That's very simple. In the previous draft attempt, it was very complex with a node and so on. So we will really simplify everything. The second topic that this draft talks about is the request routing. And it didn't change regarding the previous one. So this is the idea that, well, in order for you to remember and to really understand, I'm going to summarize it with an example. You may have a downstream CDN that support iterative routing, iterative delegation, right? We call it iterative redirection mode. And it may say, well, I support both HTTP redirect or DNS redirect, for example. And the problem is that the upstream CDN would like to force somehow the downstream CDN not to operate, for example, HTTP redirect, because the upstream CDN owns an application, an end user application running in the device or terminals that do not support correctly, for some reason, HTTP redirect. So the upstream CDN wants a way to force the downstream CDN not to use this method. That's why that's how request routing is used in this draft. And the third category, the third topic is traffic characterization. It's a set of MI objects that allows the upstream CDNs to characterize to give more information to the downstream CDN about the streaming session. So it can name a service, it can give a name of the delivery service. It can give a manifest URL, for example. It can say that my traffic is about file or VOD or live, something like that. Okay, so I see questions when I'm going to finish quickly. And okay, so CDN selection. What I'm doing here, I'm just giving you an idea of what it is. So you have an FCI object first that that allows an downstream CDN to expose a different set of transport arrangements. This is the way I call it, but it can be a really physical delivery infrastructures. So you have a list. So CDN transport is a list of FCI CDN transport object, and the FCI CDN transport object is depicted here. You have a name, and then you have a transport type. Again, it's very simple, multicast or unicast. And then you have a capacity limits. It's exactly the objects that has been defined in the corresponding SVT spec. And I don't know if it's been already the object of a CDNI draft. I'm not sure. What about the capacity limit? Is it already something ongoing or not? I'm not sure. Capacity limit. Do you know that, Sanjay? Capacity insight interface. Is it already the subject of a CDNI action?
So what is the question on the CDNI capacity insight? If
this object depends on something this property CDN capacity limits depend on a type that is named FCI capacity limit, and this is an FCI object that has been defined in the capacity insight interface. And my question is, do we have already some form of ongoing CDNI activity related to this interface? I don't remember, and I saw that.
I think the answer is yes.
Okay, so because I will have a dependency. It's Ben that has been defined this, and yeah.
So are you asking to define the CDN capacity limits as a new parameter in the capacity insights for that?
No, I'm saying that this FCI capacity limit object has already been defined in the capacity insight interface, the work that Ben conducted in the past, 2 years ago, almost. And,
yes. The ones that, so the one you have in the middle is probably already there.
Okay.
I have to look at, but the CDN transport type and the CDN traffic types, those would be, I think, new.
No, they are new. They are new. I'm just talking about, the CDN capacity limit. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that Ben did mention in the chat that it's been published as RFC 9808.
Okay, perfect. It's already an RFC. I didn't follow that. So there is no issue.
Okay. If your question was the capacity insights in an RFC, yes.
Yes, that was the question exactly. So that's cool. Okay, I'm finishing. The last property is about traffic types, and this is a set of traffic type that are supported by the downstream CDN. Okay, so once you have once the upstream CDN can get can get the idea of what exactly the downstream CDNs exposed in terms of CDN, different CDN delivery arrangement, then the upstream CDN can select, so it can use one of the CDN name that has been published, if any, and it can, in that case, associate with the name a CDN transport selection. So it's something that is quite known now in SVTA. It's a kind of let's say a policy that says, okay, you can try to attempt or fail, or attempt or best effort, or even best effort. So there are it's the idea of how do the downstream CDN select for a particular type of content this CDN that is represented by the CDN name. So I'm not going into details, but that's the kind of procedure that that would be automatically controlled by the downstream CDN. Okay, so then we have the request routine. I already disclosed most of it, so there is nothing really new here to expose. The downstream CDN can expose the set of request routing mode it supports, and the upstream CDN can force one of this iterative request routing modes by using this MI request routing object. That's very simple to understand. And then we have the traffic characterization. So we have the possibility, the upstream CDN has a possibility to define a type of traffic that will be associated with either the host match or either the path match. If you remember how we do configure downstream CDN, and traffic type can be VOD, live, or object download. So I changed comparing with the last draft. I specified and I have been more more precise in terms of what does exactly VOD means, what does live mean, and object download means. So that was asking. There is another property called ints. For the moment, is anything is not really specified, and I have got already some proposal to be more specific here. So definitively, I'm writing the next version of this draft, and then it's going to be much more specific. Here, for the moment, the idea was to let this property a bit unspecified, but we're going to be more specific next time. And then we have MI media service description. So it's a URL for a manifest that will be associated with the delivery service delivery, and then a name potentially, and a maximum bit rate. So the maximum bit rate would be the maximum bit rate allocated that the upstream CDN would like to deliver, associate with the delivery service. And that's it.
Sanjay, you're
Yeah, so no chairs here on, just a clarification question. Can you go back to the CDN selection? So just to understand, the CDN selection is a role that will be performed by the DCDN?
Yes.
And is there any specific request that needs to come from UCDN that will trigger this action, or how do you envision downstream CDN picking this up? I guess maybe I should ask, should the UCDN give some indication to the DCDN that I want you to select this particular type of CDN, or this is a decision solely up to the DCDN to decide?
No, the DCDN decides the set of downstream CDN that he wants to expose. He may expose, for example, one CDN that supports unicast and another CDN that supports multicast, for example. Or he may want to expose two CDNs supporting both only unicast, but with a CDN capacity, with a CDN transport type, with a CDN traffic types that may be different. For example, it can dedicate one CDN for VOD or file delivery and one another CDN for live delivery, right? So it can do that by exposing these two CDN through that FCI CDN selection object. And then the upstream CDN will select the CDN he wants to operate. right? So you can do well, okay, I want to go with that CDN, or I want to go with dot CDN also, and you can then stipulate and precise some kind of algorithms. I want to use this multicast CDN, that's okay, and I want to use it on the attempt or best effort basis. That means you try to use it, and if you can't, then do whatever, do at your best. Or I want to use it, and if you downstream CDN cannot use it, then give me a failure. Return me an error code. I don't want to continue. Such kind of policy. You have 3 different policy. That's the way it is supposed to work.
Yeah, got it.
Alan.
Yeah, I'll start with this slide. I think it's really foundational, and I think it needs much better definition. Kind of so far, CDNI framework really had relationship between the UCDN and DCDN. I think what Guillaume is proposing is basically equivalent to CDN virtualization. And I think it has more use cases than I think they're being addressed here. I can think at least 2 additional ones. One is geographical, geographical separation, where sort of same, let's say, endpoint can address. And there, I think we were talking about using footprints to separate that, right? So that you can actually expose different FCA object with different scoping of the footprints, and then essentially create, as a result, not explicitly, right? We're not calling them CDNs, but create CDN. I think another example came up in recent conversations, like last week at SVTA. Ben and I were talking about potential support for orchestration. So you can actually have, for example, expose different environments. So you could actually have one configuration promoted to staging, and then you can have sort of one CDN that is staging, another production, and things of this nature. And there, unlike footprint, we are saying, so it's not actually, those CDNs are not separated by the users they serve. There could be that I have CDNA, CDNB, and CDNA is, let's say, current configuration, and I want to promote a new configuration. I promote it to second CDN, and then UCDN is in control of how that's done and says, oh, okay, I have 2 CDNs that I can use here, right? And I'm choosing where to send particular user, right? So actually UCDN is in control. So I think there is more. So I think it's actually fruitful, but I think we need to step back and see, when we say CDN selection, like, wait a second, like a whole new thing. We never talked about multiple CDNs. We have to see how it maps into kind of basic concepts, right? Define these objects, and then kind of see what we want to do with them. CDN selection sounds like a strange concept to me, because I think that DCDN would choose its own CDNs, like kind of CDN choosing, like I got lost in that loop. I think when you have UCDN saying, oh, I have something advertised and I can choose which one I use, I get it, right? I can, okay, here is one, let's say one in the US and Brazil, geographical, or can be A and B, kind of, and UCDN makes a selection. I get this concept. Or even unicast, multicast. Okay, I can do this, I can do that. UCDN makes a selection, get it. But when we're saying that DCDN should choose a CDN, so what is it choosing? Is it itself? Like I'm like, it's self-referencing loop. So I'm not sure about this. I think that we need to understand that better, kind of how we asking the CDN to choose itself. I'm kind of lost on that. So I think it needs elaboration. But generally, I think if we're saying now, like, it's not a layer, it's not some new object, we're saying it's a whole new CDN, we have to go back and look how we support multiple CDNs. And it's certainly more than that, just this one object. But I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's something that kind of name footprints was sort of trying to address as well, right? But I think it's kind of has to be done more orderly. Kind of, I would even call it out, like take it out and make a separate thing potentially, because that's a topic. Like, it's separate from traffic, from other things, It kind of, you were talking about CDN virtualization here potentially. So that's
Yeah.
first comment. On the traffic type, if you can go forward to that. I commented on the before adoption on this, and I don't think that actually responds well to my concerns, because my concern is that when we are saying, I think essentially traffic type is, unless we have a way to have very solid formalized definition of what those types are, we are assuming some sort of out-of-band agreement between the parties. So UCDN says VOD, and DCDN understands what it means exactly, and there is no misunderstanding. Because again, even VOD and object download can overlap. Because
So that's exactly what I tried to address it, because last time there was only VOD live object without any definition. So I got your remark last time, and that's why I said here we've been much more precise.
I don't think it is, and I don't think you can, because
Why?
in my opinion, right, there's these things are really high-level hand-waving concepts, and it would be better kind of, and then we can take, again, I understand the use case. I'm not saying we shouldn't do this, but I think that you take a different route. Kind of either you say, here's a bunch of labels. They don't have a formal definition, because I don't think you can formalize VOD, really, right? We just throw labels and we say, and we agree, kind of make it that parties agree what it is. VOD, what they mean. Kind of, we don't assume, right? We're saying you should go out and agree what it is on a bunch of labels, and you do that. But I don't think we should formalize that, because if you don't have that agreement, parties may disagree what it means, and DCDN may end up applying optimizations that UCDN didn't want it to apply.
Okay, Alan, but
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt for a second here. I want to make sure that we get to all of our presentations for the day.
Yeah.
And this is really good design discussion, and I encourage you to have it on the list. But I've locked the queue so that we can get forward. Rajiv, did you have any clarifying questions?
Yes. So my question was relating to slide 4. Yeah. So the CDN transport type, I'm a little concerned about this being such a broad, parameter, just saying multicast and unicast. I believe there is probably some level of complexity hidden under those two broad categories, especially around multicast. So what are we talking about? Multicast quick, or whatever mock multicast variant?
No. We don't want to complexify here, and we don't really care about what exactly transport protocol. We just care about the transport type. That's what I named type. We don't want to enter in complexity. What we want to understand here is that there is either it's multicast, which means one to many, or unicast, one to one. That's what we want to understand.
So someone who, as a CDN operator, is operating two independent multicast protocols, but the upstream provider whose app is going to eventually consume these content streams supports one of them, you don't have a way to differentiate at this point. So I understand trying to keep out the complexity, but then that just creates a gray area of saying, hey, I operate two multicast capable delivery networks, and which one can I potentially choose to
Hey,
deliver?
Rajiv, this is also a really good conversation for the list.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
am I the last one in the queue?
Yeah, Rajiv, there is maybe one way to be more precise is to use the hint. The property I described later. So that with the hints, you can add some description along with these,
Yeah,
big,
but the hints are part of the MI coming from upstream to downstream.
Yeah.
So
we need to move forward,
similar
Rajiv.
hints going
I'm
upstream.
gonna give 1 second here on traffic types. Since I was the original author of putting that in there, I'll say something. It came from the work we did at level 3 CDN. The idea there really was, in fact, to have these high-level concepts there, like live versus VOD and some hints, and those seeded defaults. So if you as a customer configuring your CDN, if you just said that, if you just provided the traffic type, that would seed a bunch of defaults if you didn't then go in there and set a bunch of other things. And we found that very useful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next on the agenda.
All right. So let me see. The next on agenda is Alan. Guillaume, thank you so much. And let me switch the slide. Okay, you got it. Okay.
The slide control, CDNI. Need to choose my slides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 sec. Yeah.
So while Alan is sharing the slides, I would suggest that Rajiv and Alan both, you had some good points, so make them in the list also, so that we can follow through, and something that Guillaume can work on that.
Yeah, and some of that will raise already, so we can continue. Yeah, so a topic of presentation is the work we did on the triggers. So we are at draft 18. We last discussed 16. We had just intermediate draft 17 just done to extend the timeline. The real kind of update came in draft 18, which published before the cutover for this session. Kind of primarily responses to the detailed review from Kevin, and I really appreciate it. Like it's kind of, and after going through this, like with the comb ourselves, myself and Jay, Kevin was able to find a lot of kind of substantive comments and editorial. So we responded to that, I think, and as we just discussed, I think next step is going to be just probably in version 19, given that we have kind of ISG comments from around registries and some commentary. Just question is it how big it's going to be, and hopefully it's not big. Just what's in 18. So it's a bit of repetition of what I covered, because what we did last time is that we submitted draft 16 in the window. Kevin submitted a review, and I prepared the responses. So basically, a lot of this stuff is that we already discussed and made it just into the draft. There's not a lot. Some of this is repetitive. So this is something already discussed. One of the things we had to address is kind of making very clear around various features of the triggers, what is mandatory, what is optional, and how we want to manage kind of the extensions. So what was our response made it to the draft. We're saying that the core features of the triggers are going to require RFC. So if you want to introduce a fourth type of triggers in addition to purge and validate and preposition, you need to do another RFC. Right, but if you want to create another trigger extension, you may not have to do that. There may be just external spec that does that. So we're releasing that kind of RFC requirements on two things, which are kind of really non-core features, and we're designed to be modular. This is trigger extensions, so you don't have to do RFC. It could be a SVTA spec, for example, so it doesn't have to be RFC. And object lists, for example, come up with a new format to describe files, to feed them into triggers. Can again specify that should be enough, right? Also kind of make some judgment calls on the rest of the features, like purge and validate preposition, what's mandatory, what's not. So we want it to be just very kind of low common denominator here, not to require too much, and maybe even more flexible maybe than Kevin expected. For example, we said we're not requiring, for example, one of the verbs, so trigger, invalidate, and purge. You may use just one of them. Right? If you find valuable to do preposition, you don't need purge, you can do that. If you want to do just kind of purge and not do prepositioning, with many CDNs do, this is fine as well. So similarly, kind of you don't have to do content and metadata, right? Moreover, we are encouraging, because I think that's a better implementation, is to have separate endpoints for content, which would be cache management, and metadata, which will be more of a configuration management. So that's kind of on mandatory and optional in the triggers. Per Kevin's suggestion, we refactored trigger collection. So it used to be that we had triggers and there was one kind of trigger collection as a kind of root level object that had filter representation. And you can ask, oh, give me trigger collection that is filtered by state. Show me all failed triggers, or show me that by label, or show me all triggers. And that would be just representation of the object. And that ended up being a bit cumbersome because we also added some objects on top. So there was like a bit of a kind of a mix of things that are of different nature. So Kevin suggested a structure that would actually separate collections from the root level object, and we adopted that. So we introduced a new object called trigger index, which kind of fashioned after host index in a way. So trigger index is basically a list of collections, and we have a mandatory collection of all triggers, which always has to be there. There is also mandatory collections per state. So for every state of a trigger, pending, active, failed, canceling, canceled, and so on, you have to expose a collection. So somebody can take a look at triggers of that state only. And lastly, dynamically, we also creating trigger collection by label. So if some labeled triggers get created, they go into those collections. And triggers can be referenced by more than one collection. So you can retrieve it from the label if you has it. You can retrieve it from kind of all triggers, or you can get it by its state. Optionally, we also allow in the collections to do kind of what we call extended representation, which is if you really don't want to go and fetch collection and then fetch individual triggers, you can ask collection to include the triggers in them, like the actual trigger representation, which can be a lot, but it's also kind of more of an API optimization, because otherwise you have to do iterative. You have to first get the index, then get the collection, and then get individual triggers. So that's a feature capability that we advertise. That's kind of, if DCDN supports something like this, that UCDN can use it to optimize API work. Additionally, and the trigger index also has some kind of top level attributes that kind of are needed for kind of which including CDN ID, and there is a parameter that says for how long DCDN is keeping completed triggers around, because there's a process of expiration. So you completed the trigger, it's done, it's canceled, it's fully completed. After a while, which I think is at least a day, DCDN will remove it. So that's an attribute that's advertised at the top, saying kind of, once you're done, you have like a day to pull it, but then this object can be removed. So that's kind of rather big change structurally. So kind of, and I think it makes for more cleaner structure. But that's new. That's one of the areas we're asking for review on specifically. One more change, simplification in a way, also Kevin's comment. Execution policy had an option for UCDN to ask for immediate execution. Hey, this is a trigger that I needed to be acted on now, kind of, as opposed to at some point in the future whenever you feel like it. And we have this urgent attribute in execution policy. Kevin pointed out, we support that already without that, using REST. We can actually have a way for UCDN to come in and say, oh, kind of, please, this trigger, I want it processed now without an extension, right? And the way to do this is that actually, because we're now allowing modification of triggers, so we first allow that. So you can UCDN can come in and say, this pending trigger, I really need it right away. And DCDN may not grant it, may or may not grant it depending on business logic or dependencies, right? But there is a way to do that, and it's not kind of dependency. It doesn't need an extension. So what we did is with version 18, remove that. So there's no urgent feature anymore. And we added a support for this to be done at creation time. So not just create and then ask for it to be expedited, but you can actually create it right away. And DCDN may make a call and say, kind of, yeah, I can do it, no problem. Or no, I won't. And again, there are multiple reasons that we're pointing out that DCDN could deny such a request. So there is that. Okay, a sec. Did I skip over one? No, I didn't. So that is slide 5, slide 6. Per Kevin request also, I think there was a good ask for building a decision tree for processing because of the multiple extensions. There is a kind of their interdependency, and the business logic is complex. So we used to have some sort of advice on how to kind of address some of the issues, but it was not really formal. There's a more formal decision tree that kind of takes the implementers kind of through typical issues that they need to address, like priority deadlock, like you have triggers that are kind of looking for each other in the priority, so they never get executed. How you have to look at that if somebody is asking for a trigger to be processed right away at creation, what do you need to look at? There's a time policy, like there is a limit by when the triggers has to be executed. So DCDN has to look at the queue and evaluate and make sure that these are kind of taken, the constraints are addressed. The time policy extension, and also because now we have dependency between triggers. So when you complete a trigger, you need to go back into the pending queue and see maybe something could be now acted upon. So there is that. And lastly, kind of modification. So all these issues are built in the decision tree. Again, this is the second area that we need kind of pair of eyes to look at. Kind of structure, language, mistakes. That's new. That's one of the two, kind of the second area for review. More minor things. We added previously we had something we added to the trigger to indicate a status without kind of providing extended status. So just total object count and total object size and so on. We added another attribute that kind of shows how many nodes were involved in that. So it provides kind of better perspective on things. I see that kind of time is running out, so I'll go quickly to the rest. And Rajiv has in the queue. Examples on the policy locations. So some clarifications on the business logic that you didn't kind of specifically announce footprint is not there, and you can actually have allow and then deny it, which is a carve out. In this example, like yes, all of US, but except for Massachusetts. So that's an example for kind of can be tricky otherwise. We learn it in some other places. Deny and allow, kind of you have to be very clear about it. Now, FCI, there was like two registries. We just forgot to have registries for two objects. I think they're URL type and something else. So everything that we kind of data types that are now have the registries. And there was a fix on this object CIT scope. Basically, when we announcing support for things, we do that in multiple objects as opposed to one object before, which was wrong. And there was like Kevin called it out correctly that it wasn't clear. So this way, the right way. So you can actually announce support for specs and extensions by combination of action and subject. Preposition content, purge content, preposition metadata. You can announce support for the specs and for extensions. So next steps, right? I think we discussed at length. So really looking for review on two new sections. That's kind of the most important. Any more, like, again, people who can do this, please take a look. It's massive, 117 pages, but hopefully we talked about it enough so you kind of, whoever starts the reading will know what we're talking about. Again, going to version 19 now, I think we decided, but question is just how big it is. Hopefully it's not, and we can conclude in December. Rajiv.
Yeah, I think I have something to do with slide 4 again. So if we could come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
So the two things that kind of pop out to me as potential issues here. One is where you're giving an option of retrieving not just the trigger IDs but the trigger content itself as part of the collections. I suspect that in any relatively large operational situation, those are going to land up becoming pretty huge messages. So I would consider that we potentially avoid doing that. We already have very clear and specific ways of accessing the triggers data itself. So the collection having anything other than the IDs or the URLs of the relevant triggers, I don't know what convenience it will add versus the level of potential complexity and size that we'd have to deal with.
That's first of all, that's opt-in intentionally. More than that, it's opt-in that's advertised. You have to support that as on the CDN side, and UCDN then once it can have it. And there's optimization is for UCDN to actually reduce level of iterations. Actually, if you have multiple triggers, you may just then end up doing iterations and collecting trigger by trigger, as opposed to actually having it one shot. And it doesn't have to be big, because again, remind you, collections can be old collections, or it can be selected. For example, if I want to look at all the triggers that fail right now, I'm rather than having like to do, I don't know, let's say there are 3 of them, right? So then I have to do 4 or 5 calls to get them, as opposed to 1. And kind of I can do that, right? If I want
Yeah,
to.
so my concern there basically is the fact that in an operational system, where again I'm probably going to have a certain amount of retention, okay, maybe 48 hours of retention on tickets, it can start becoming really large payloads. So
Yeah, but you
maybe
don't. It's again, it's optional, Rajiv. Like it's if you want it, you'll get it. It's not the default. If you want it, you
okay.
can get it. If you don't want it, you don't get it.
So if I can interject, I think, so this is what actually you need, Alan. This is the kind of input is needed, but I think, Rajiv, you would do a great favor in reviewing this draft 18 and putting comments on the list. I think that would be very, very helpful. And I know because we've got other stuff to cover, so
Yeah.
if there's nothing critical, then let's move on to the next topic.
Cannot agree more. Okay, so how do I do next slide? I need to actually
I think you need to change
up
slides.
slides, and then
You might have to request again.
yeah, I think so. I just stopped that. So depending on how discussion goes, the next one will be going to either very short or actually very long. So hopefully, kind of the first.
I did observe that there aren't a lot of slides in it, but
Yeah,
there
but
could be a lot of conversation and not a lot of slides.
there you go. Yeah, kind of request screen share. Can I do that? No, it's going.
Yes. Oh, did you approve?
No, I didn't. I messed it up.
Where's the?
I'm just going to start the timer.
Yeah. Okay.
Did that do its thing?
I got
Might
it.
make-
Let me see.
It might make you pick again.
It does. Yeah. One sec. Metadata? No. Source. I don't see it. Is it possible?
So I just opened it. So named footprints is in there. Here.
I can look for it. No.
I can.
Let me do it again. Let's do it again because I didn't see it.
I got it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that's like not a lot of scrolling. Being shared.
I, named footprints. It's not in the list. I see it in the meeting materials.
Yeah, I submitted really late, so maybe that's why.
I see the name footprint.
Yeah, I see it in the meeting materials.
Says a new deck is being shared, but nothing comes out.
I'm going to exit and come back in just in case. Do you see it?
Nope.
I'm looking now. Let me move it over again.
Maybe you can share a screen instead.
Let me see if I can move them over again. Refresh my page. It's shared. It's there.
Okay. I have a backup. Do you get it?
No, I didn't see.
Sanjay is being shared.
Oh. It says you have, and I grant preloaded slides.
I can talk to that, it's after all, it's one slide and kind of, that's not, let's not lose time.
Yeah.
So, kind of where we are with name footprint, right? That the latest, there was a draft that was published in the summer before last IETF, and then Kevin provided a review, and I think there was actually back and forth discussion on the list. And I just wanted to kind of to recap what are the current understanding of this effort is and where we're going. It just sounded kind of sounded share a plan. There's no new draft that's been shared, and the current draft will expire in January. So I plan to submit the draft kind of version 3 before version 2 expires naturally. So footprints in CDNI, right? So if look, kind of, I think that we're taking time to kind of attach it to things. I think Kevin had difficulty, and then actually I had difficulty because I think my understanding was kind of a bit off where the thing belongs. And I hope I have clarity, and I want to share it, or at least better clarity. So historically, footprints were defined, were mentioned kind of all the way back to the actual first initial drafts. And I think they were defined very kind of in a fuzzy way. And I think around, again, CDNs kind of cooperating kind of in global delivery, and they wanted to kind of to each CDN responsible for particular geography. It started there. In RFC 8006, there is one use of footprints, which is scoping metadata objects, right? There's a specific way of doing that, and there's MI footprint metadata objects that are used to do that. So that's first footprint. Then 8008 essentially does different thing. It's actually different footprint. It's a footprint that used to narrow and scope capability objects, right? And the kind of 8008 kind of talks broadly about F in the FCI, footprints and capabilities, but then sort of actually takes a dive and says, let's figure out on scope, kind of figure out how we scope capabilities. It's not taking a broader view of footprints being broader utility, even though in the meantime 8006 already using that differently to scope metadata, not capabilities, right? But still 808 kind of just goes and says, oh, let's just focus on that, okay? And I think the reason for that, I think that, like, if I read the term kind of documents correctly, that 8008 was more in development earlier and actually referenced by some RFCs that were released earlier than that. So maybe there's some timing there. So kind of 8006 maybe came later than 8008, but that's archaeology. Next development was RFC 9241, which Alto, right? I think Kevin was referring to that, which is actually enabling canonical footprint references. And that's different from both 6 and 8, because both 6 and 8 talk about footprints, there we go, in a sense of what I call inline. So there's actually footprint is declared in the scope. It's local and ephemeral, right? So there's something you define in metadata objects is kind of actually has a scope of that object. It's not global, it's not stable, it's not external. So both of them do that. So Alto was an effort to actually establish canonical. Say, hey, we have some external definition of footprint somewhere else, and let's use Alto service for that, and we can basically point to that, right? So that's where kind of this effort comes in on this background. So what we try to
keep in view. Sorry, Alan, for the interruption. Just keep view in time because I shortened the time for this session. for
Yeah,
this one.
so I'm this slide, and that's it. So what we're trying to do is kind of establish basically canonical footprint references, right? That meaning that we have authoritative references with stable addressing, right? That can be used across all objects, so not just metadata and FCI, which are already there, but also in the triggers. So basically, all CDNI objects can use these references for scoping, right? And that's something that would be done with CDN framework without dependency on anything external. So we're not relying on Alto or somebody else to come and help us. We want to establish it ourselves. So this is what named footprint is. And the right way, it seems right now, is actually to establish it as a generic base object next to capability, kind of give the F the right place next to C in the base object. And so we have basic objects as MI generic metadata capability. We want to add footprint. And these objects would support what we're trying to support, which is hierarchy. So you can have footprints kind of within footprints. So you can build trees. You can cache footprints because definitions can be dynamic. You want to address that, kind of support highly dynamic footprints. And you want to support namespaces because maybe the way particular CDN addresses users can be different depending on the use. So that's kind of the goal, right? And the CDNI objects can use either existing inline footprints, which are kind of local and ephemeral, and everything so far. And MI footprint is actually that ephemeral footprint that lives in the scope where it's declared, or we can create, or they can use this kind of canonical. And maybe this is a better name than named footprints because sort of think named is maybe not the best, but again, TBD. Kind of the spec itself, the draft, has additional parts that are unrelated to that. So we need to actually kind of remember them because there's some coming enhancements coming to inline footprints, like kind of shoring up the database-based footprints types, kind of geolocation DB and stuff like that. So making them more solid and kind of easy to reference, and adding express languages. But that's sort of, I think, less controversial than the first part. I think we could figure out the first part, and we actually establish that base object, and kind of that's a separate. It's not metadata. It's not FCI. It's a separate object, and then point to them from other places. That's where we want to go. Next step is the next draft to do that. So that's my plan. Hope it makes sense. So if anybody has questions, now's the time.
I don't see anyone in the queue. So thank you. So we're going to have
See if the next slides are in the.
logging extensions. When we're bringing up your slides, logging extensions, and then I also inserted a short blurb from the previous discussions on the protected secrets, so we can bring that up also. All right, Ben.
All right. So this is a short presentation on the status of the logging extensions draft. So the newest version of the draft is still a work in progress and has not yet been published since the last IETF. It does have significant changes from what's currently in Data Tracker. We're adding a bunch of new functionality related to custom fields and to sampling, and I'll show you some examples of that in the following slides. So first is we wanted to have the ability for the downstream CDN to provide additional fields that can be included in logging records, both on the upstream defined logging side and on the downstream side from logging source. So the new FCI logging field capability allows the downstream to assign identifiers to new fields and include a reference to external documentation on how that field is utilized. the field can then be included into any logging record on the FCI side with included fields when defining an FCI logging source. And optionally, if the downstream specifies allow include fields, to allow the upstream to configure included fields with MI logging metadata, then it can be included via the include fields property of a transport. And what this lets you do is, since you can define multiple transports, is have different logs for different purposes, including custom fields. To go along with that, we've defined a new custom record type, which has no fields in it. So it's the empty set. And this allows the fields that are part of that, that are used when you use this record type, to be specified solely by the include fields and included fields properties, essentially allowing you to build an entire record type from scratch, defined entirely within the scope of the advertisement or the configuration metadata. Yep. So the other thing we're adding is sampling. So since you can define all of these custom record types, you might have record types that are specialized for very specific purposes. And the samplers allow you to restrict the records that are included in that log based off various criteria. So the very simplest one is percentage based, where you specify a rate and the records are randomly included according to that rate. So in this example, we're only including 10% of records in this particular log stream. We're also defining a sampler based off of MEL expressions so that you can utilize all of the logging record fields in various configurations and with Boolean logic to define selection criteria. That's obviously the most complicated one. The session-based sampler allows you to include all of the records associated with selected sessions, and the sessions that are selected via a rate similar to the logging sampler percentage, but it will select everything for that session, and you can define how the session is identified, whether that's via a request header or a query parameter of the request URL. And then the last one is a debug sampler, which allows records to always be included if it includes a specified header or query parameter. So that's the summary of the major changes that we're working on. Additionally, beyond that, there's a lot of cleanup work. Some people pointed out some inconsistencies in some of the ways that logging fields as defined in the specification are named versus the previous logging specification. So we're going to clean that up. There will be plenty more examples for some of those things that clearly show their usage. And yeah, and that's where we're going with that. And then Sanjay, you said you had a slide for protected secrets.
Yep. 1 second, Chris is bringing that up.
Okay. And with protected secrets, the big change that's being worked on, again, this is not published yet to Data Tracker, is removing the explicit reference to HashiCorp Vault in favor of a generic external store reference. To go along with this, we'll have a registry where the external store types can be defined so that they're not in the document. And then beyond that, we'll need to get a request to review from security, because that's really still essential for this draft, particularly for the embedded secret store, which utilizes encrypted values inside of the metadata objects. And Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the process for this is once we're relatively happy with it, we will ask for a sector review. There's a checkbox. I actually showed you the checkbox the other day. That if I click it and tell it to put it in their queue, then the wonderful sector people will take a look at it when they get a chance, and they will tell us where we got it wrong.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I don't see anyone else in the queue, so I will give the working group 3 minutes of time back. Enjoy.
You actually have given 10 plus 2, so that's good. Thank you.
Who's next?
So we would have Glenn.
Yeah, you want to bring up that melon processing stages updated?
I gotcha.
And then we'll look at the source metadata extended model. This will all be pretty quick. No, that's the older one. I think I just provided an update, the one that says updated.
There was flurry of documents coming in, so I may have put the wrong one also. I don't know. Let's see.
I think that any document that came in after the meeting officially started didn't make it to the slides, but I do have, hold tight.
I see it there. It says updated. Yeah.
Hang on. I do have your document.
So, oops, let me cancel. Accidentally.
Thank you.
It
Yeah, I
is
see it in the meeting agenda slides package.
processing stages and Mel
Updated.
Yes. This one is going to go like last one, where we got to do it direct share. Apologies to everyone on a metered connection.
Sorry about that. That's good. Yeah, so Sanjay had presented this at the last IETF, so I don't want to go over all of it. I think we've talked about Mel a bunch, but I did just want to jump down to 4 and 5. We'll talk about those two in processing stages.
4 and 5.
Yeah, one more, the pictures, and you can go full, yeah. So, yeah, we'll go to 4 first. Back one. Thank
This
you.
one?
Yep. Yeah. So just kind of as a refresher for anyone who hasn't been close to what we're talking about, this really breaks down how a DCDN handles a request from a UCDN into these 4 stages, and that each of these 4 stages is an opportunity to do stuff. You might be suppressing headers, you might be augmenting or adding headers, you might be altering cache rules, you might be generating synthetic content. So everything is oriented around these 4 places in the chain, and that's just sort of something to keep in mind as you read through everything here. And that last one, the client response one, is interesting because that's an opportunity to do something to the response before it goes out the door, and it comes from cache. So in that case, you can actually kind of personalize responses that are cached deep in your network, but still do some last moment personalization before they go out the door without polluting your cache with the personalized copies. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there a little bit. Now that we're going to actually start having people, review these stock in more detail, it's good to keep all that in mind. And then go to the next slide and see how big we can go on the next slide. Yeah. So we have an ASCII art version of this in the CDNI draft. We have this better, nicer picture in the SVTA version. We'll see if we can make the required format to get this in the the PDF into the version of the IETF doc that does support real diagrams. But this is the data model that sort of structures all of these processing stages. So each of the stages here that we just talked about, the 4 stages, has its rules. And there is, in that purple box, that version 2, there's this idea of if-else rules. So it really is a JSON structure that effectively is, if this condition, apply these rules, else supply these rules. The conditions typically are on an inspection of the URL or the request headers. And again, this all depends foundationally on the expression language, the other document, because these are expressions that allow you to, in a rich way, typically evaluate request headers and request responses and stuff. And then the rest of the objects towards the lower right of this diagram are the objects that define request and response transformations and header transformations, such as, if you go to the lower right there, again, this is all sort of very typical CDN and open caching stuff. This idea of a header transform where you're adding headers, replacing headers, or deleting headers, and then putting them in by name. And then all the way in the bottom there, this, if I want to add or alter a header, there's this idea where it can just be a static string, or you'll see this throughout the docs, value is expression or URI is expression. That's an indicator that it is a MEL expression, so it's a dynamically generated. You might be synthesizing a response value based on some conditions. So I think, just sort of looking at those 2 diagrams that we just reviewed, that's kind of your guidepost as you go in and review the document in more detail. Good. Any more on this, or I can move on to the other one? Any questions? Comments? Good. Why don't we move on to the other one, the source metadata extended model?
Metadata extended model.
Let's see.
This is just one slide.
Coming up.
Thank you. Okay, so the essence of this RFC, source access control, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but basically it extends what you see in purple there. That was the original RFC 80006. Source metadata, and it was just a pretty simple way to express a source or an upstream CDN in terms of how do I authenticate with it and what's the endpoint and what protocol do I use. That was it. It was pretty simple. So we've really blown it out here with all sorts of extensions. So we made source metadata extended that has those initial 3 little things that a source had, but then we've blown it out with all sorts of additional options that provide a whole lot of new functionality. A lot of it is around supporting multiple origins. So you can have, or multiple, we use sort of the term source, upstream, CDN, and origin a little bit interchangeably here. That's just sort of how things work out in the industry. But this idea that you can have multiple origins and have failover rules between them, that you can have load balancing rules between multiple origins, and that you can have detention rules. So if one of your upstream sources or origins is not responding, you can put it in detention, i.e. put it out of rotation for a period of time. And there's also mechanisms in here for you to poll it and determine when it should go back into rotation. So those things I just described are really the meat of this thing. We also, I think in this document, did define a few new protocols just because in 80006, the only protocols are HTTP and HTTP 1.1, that's it. So we actually defined H2 and H3. And so, those should certainly be in the IANA registry table for protocols. I think that's really about it. Again, if you sort of keep this in mind and look at the intro and the RFC, that'll kind of give you a guide for all the topics we're covering here. And again, if you see there in the center of source extended, all those areas where it's endpoint is expression, origin host is expression, SNI host, those are all references to the MEL. So those are all uses of the expression language to allow for dynamic behavior in these configurations. I'll leave it at that. Questions, comments? Did I get us back on schedule?
Actually, yeah, we're ahead of schedule now. So
Very short. I don't think there's much point in going into more detail. Those are just the high level view of what these docs are doing. And Guillaume already covered the fourth of the new ones, which was the delivery metadata.
Well, and everybody can read the drafts for all the detail and are encouraged to do so and provide feedback on the list.
yeah, so I think that that actually concludes all the drafts that we were going to discuss. So I think that's that. The other topic that we wanted to bring up is trying to see if it would be more productive for us to work through between the CDN meetings, between the IETF meetings, to set up some interims where we can work through documents, because we have at least 10, if not more. I'm probably undercounting, but at least there are 10 documents that are out there in some stages. And if it helps for us to get a IETF sanctioned interim call where we can virtually get together and sort of go through, pick up a draft and make sure that it's being reviewed. You have feedback that you need in order to make progress. So, and this could be every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, whatever cadence that we want to pick. So, and we can review this again on the mailing list, but that's something that we wanted to throw out and see if this would be more effective for us to be able to have a call that we can have on a regular basis. And I'm going to let Chris also chime in.
Rajiv is in queue.
Oh, Rajiv is in queue. I didn't see that.
Yeah, great idea. Definitely something I'm happy to get behind. My only concern is the timing. We're starting this off in November and December, where schedules can become quite complicated for a lot of people.
That's a great observation, and it's precisely what I was going to suggest. I was going to suggest that we try to aim for mid-January, for after everyone has sufficiently recovered from their holidays, and then perhaps mid-January we can join back up and make plans for the new year, talk about what people got accomplished over the last couple of months in Q4, and get some progress going.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. We can set up an interim to discuss about the interim, to schedule, when we want to meet. So have the first call to discuss the schedule.
No. We want the first interim in the mid-January, and we should have we should discuss on the list the exact timing of it. But I'm thinking the third week of January is probably ideal. Rajiv, did you need to say something? You're still in the queue.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Gori as AD. I think we want to advertise that list of interims as soon as we can. So I really suggest getting some doodle polls done and choose some dates. Don't choose too many interims. Choose a couple, choose 3, whatever you need, and put dates in.
Yeah.
It's okay to cancel them and just decide you're not meeting, but for IETF process, it's better to have them declared months before they happen so that nobody can say, I missed it and so it was something important. So do whatever process you've got and then put some real dates in and ask the secretariat to put that in the calendar.
Yeah. So time-wise, I'm thinking that we'll all take the week after this week off to recover. And then about 2 weeks from now, or about a week from now, you should expect a conversation on the list with some doodle polls that will last for about a week. And then we will select a time and put it on the calendar. And that time will probably be mid-January.
Yeah.
And the only other hard rule is keep it away from the next IETF meeting that's in person. So at least 2-3 weeks before that last one.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. All right, so that's that. And then the last thing on the agenda is any other topic. I think the answer is no, likely. Chris?
I think we're good. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, we have Rajiv.
No, I just wanted to say we have bitten out a pretty significant chunk of work already, to the point where we have a roadmap through to a year and a half from now. So I don't think we really need any other business.
No. Well, and my suspicion is that we're going to slide easily to 2 years from now. So I see plenty of very exciting work in our future, and I look forward to working on it with y'all. So thank you so much. I think we are going to close out.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Merci, au revoir.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
And see you at the next interim.
I think having the room at the far end of the hall actually made it more productive.
It's always challenging to figure out when you want to let the conversation.
Great. How you doing?
See you. Good.
Seeing you for a while.
The dynamics are good. People are reading